Tonight on That's Dark.
The captivating and ambitious queen whose rise to power ended in tragedy, marking a pivotal moment in the tumultuous reign of King Henry VIII. Follow us through the life of Anne Boleyn. Hello, everybody.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Alyssa. And we have a fun history one. I'm so excited. It's another King Henry wife.
Yes, his second wife.
Second wife, Anne Boleyn.
But first chit chat.
Yes.
A little chit
I'm
chat.
so excited.
Oh, update on Lord Macchiato. That is his, I know we said his official name was Mocha Latte. It just did not fit. He was just too regal. So my bunny, our podcast bun, is officially a free running bun. So you will probably see him popping up on the couch because he just goes everywhere. He's not yet great. He gets kind of spooked when I go to pick him up. And I think it's because he's been picked up and given away, and picked up and re-put in the new place. So I'm just giving him time, but he does come and sit on my lap and he will come and scrape at my legs like to make me give him pets. Like he is the cutest thing ever. But his official name, and this has not changed, it has been that way now, is Lord Macchiato Binkelmeyer. And that is perfect. That's his name. And that he is our pod buddy because he's in the pod room / office. He's so cute. He's 5 and he's just so cute.
He's perfect.
He's litter box trained. He doesn't chew except his chew things.
Wow.
He was working his little puzzle today to get his treats out. Like okay, so I just have to go on a quick rant. Not even a rant, a quick something. So I owned rabbits when I was younger, right? I had a rabbit when I was a kid. Back then, not the right education. We kept them in cages. Owned rabbits when I was a young mom. Again, still didn't have the right education, but I definitely let my bunnies out to free roam a lot, right? Didn't understand the concept of litter training, but here's my thing. They're phenomenal pets. They're so smart. You can litter train them. You can absolutely train them not to chew. And when they get older, they tend not to chew. It's just like a puppy, right? So when they're little babies and young rabbits, they chew a lot. But they can free roam your house. They don't bark. They don't freak out. They're super clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like they love to have their space clean. Like I thought bunnies were like messy. Lord Macchiato is not messy. He likes when I go in to clean up his space, you could tell he's like, yeah.
Yes, clean it,
please, thank you. If there's anything on his ground, which typically comes from me, like putting his hay in, like I'll clean it up because he seems a little, but they're so clean and just chill. I mean, when I go sit in my room with him, it's like zen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just chill. I don't know. I'm saying they are an underrated pet.
Yeah.
And I think people should look into them more often.
Yes, absolutely.
But do your research. Because the problem is people don't do their research. They get them for children. And honestly, bunnies aren't really for kids.
Yeah.
They're not.
They're not like a simple pet.
No.
I would say.
I wouldn't say well, okay. So once you have them trained, they're simple because their care is simple.
Right.
But once they can free roam, but they're not what you guys think. They don't want to be held like super tight and lugged around like maybe. And I don't really like cats being treated that way either. But I'm just saying that that's not their vibe.
Yeah.
They absolutely would love to cuddle up next to you, like come near you, get pets, hang out on your lap. But they're just not like kids squishy.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times kids get them, then get bit or put them aside because they don't want to care for them. And then they end up at shelters. And right now, most all shelters are overrun with bunnies, but there's tons of rescues. So if you ever think about what kind of pet should I have? Do I want a cat? Do I want a dog? Just maybe think about a bunny. Think about getting one that's older, fixed, litter trained, and see how that goes because they can free roam. They don't need to they actually shouldn't be in cages. Okay. Let's get into a history lesson.
I'm so excited for this.
Now, I would like to preface this as I am not a historian, nor am I a history teacher. What I am is a history lover.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything sounds like, okay, those facts you don't think they're right, because lots of historians have differing opinions on lots of things. So don't come at me.
Yeah.
It's stuff. I have read books on Anne Boleyn. I have read fictional books on Anne Boleyn. I have read so many things. And then I've gotten data, of course, from the internet and all that kind of stuff. So it's just data that I've compiled. A lot of it was like stuff that actually was written down. But I'm just saying everything I've read said historians really argue on what her role was, right? Historians always argue on, was she strategic with her pursuit of the crown or just a pawn in a deadly game? So,
Oh boy.
you guys can decide at the end of this what you think she is. And there's a picture of Anne Boleyn. So I think very different from Catherine of Aragon. So early life. So Anne Boleyn is believed to have been born in 1501. There is actually not anything documented to say of her birth. So typically they would have something in a Bible. They don't have anything like that. So she's believed to have been born in 1501. Probably at Blickling Hall in Norfolk. Her father was Thomas Boleyn. Horrible dude. You guys will hear. Who had been squire of the body at the funeral of Henry VII. So he was very involved in the court, you know, in royalty and that kind of stuff. But he wasn't royalty himself.
Okay.
He was part of it, part of the court, which is a thing. So, and was knighted at Henry VIII's coronation. So now he's knighted. So he's knight, you know, he's Sir Thomas Boleyn now because he's knighted. Anne's mother, Elizabeth Howard, was descended from King Edward I and formed part of Catherine of Aragon's first household. So Anne Boleyn's mother essentially took care of Catherine of Aragon when she was with Arthur.
Oh my God.
Before she went with Henry. Remember Arthur died and all that. And so she was part of that household.
Oh my God.
What was Anne's mother.
Okay.
Yeah. So all kind of like intertwined. The Boleyn family moved to Hever Castle in 1504 when Sir Thomas Boleyn inherited the castle from his father William. Anne Boleyn's father Thomas sent her to Burgundy to the court of Margaret of Austria. So one thing about Anne is her father, I think, was strategic in who he was sending her to, because she went to the court of Margaret. She was Queen Margaret of Austria. So she really served queens. And there, you know, really, which puts her in a pivotal position to insert into a court or to insert as a queen's lady maid, you know. So, and then she and her sister Mary was sent to the French court to become the French Queen Claude's attendants. So they are essentially the first ladies or the ladies in waiting of the French Queen Claude. When she joined Queen Claude's household she had learned French and been exposed to a Renaissance court led by a woman who was a patron of the arts. See, Anne would have continued to perfect her language and singing and dancing skills at the French court, while also enjoying the sophisticated atmosphere and French fashion. So they were more forward-thinking. And then Claude loved art. She loved books. She loved art. So like Margaret of Austria, Queen Claude loved books and manuscripts. And you can even see still to this day it's at the Morgan Museum. There is a 1517 prayer book that she had done up. So, and it's all illustrated. It's supposed to be beautiful. Anne Boleyn went on to have her own illuminated manuscripts and books, and they were made in the Renaissance style, which have been popular in France and used by Claude. Claude was also a keen art lover and also a patron of miniature style. And what miniature style was is little tiny paintings. So it's just little tiny, like, you know, paintings of fruit but they're just tiny. So that's what miniature style was. Eric Ives writes of how Anne Boleyn may have even been given the opportunity to meet Leonardo da Vinci, or at least see him, because in 1516, da Vinci settled at Clough near Amboise, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing those right, where Claude liked to spend her pregnancies. Anne was once again surrounded by art and culture, and it must have shaped the woman she became. So with the Queen of Austria, surrounded by art and culture. With going to France, surrounded by all art and culture and learning to read and a lot of things that, you know, kind of Queen Claude sounded like a forward-thinking woman. So, although Francis I is seen as a licentious and his court as immoral and corrupt, Anne Boleyn was serving his wife, Queen Claude, a woman known for her piety, morality, and virtue. Claude was also pregnant on an annual basis.
Oh my good Lord.
And she chose to spend her pregnancies at the royal chateau of Amboise and Blois, I'm not saying those right, rather in Paris. Cloud's household was far from scandalous. It was strict. But here's the thing, and this is where I wanted to kind of come in and give some history. So Anne absolutely would have seen a lot of stuff being in a French court, because Francis I was what they said. He loved debauchery, loved it. And from everything I've read, in his court time, they'd be having their get-togethers and someone would be screwing, lack of a better word, on a wall, right? And then they would have peekaboo dresses where the nipples would pop out of their dresses. And it was all about like that, just kind of debauchery and sex and seduction, right? So here's Anne like cultivating a very art and like, taking care of Queen Claude. And yeah, she might not have been at the French courts like a ton because Claude was constantly having children, but she definitely is seen, right? And then I want to talk about kind of like the history of what France's monarchs was like. So Queen Claude. So what would Anne have been seeing while she was tending to Queen Claude? So I couldn't find a lot on her, but I did find things on Catherine of Aragon's mother as she was in the France, and then also Marie Antoinette. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick little veer to talk about what it was like to be a monarch in the court of France. So what are to us the most intimate moments of our lives were for France's monarch's public and political affairs. Marie Antoinette reported to her mother, the Empress Marie Theresa, soon after her arrival at Versailles in 1770, that her chamber was opened at midday and she did her toilette, that is, put on her rouge, washed her hands before an audience of courtiers. So she had to put her makeup on and wash her hands in front of an audience.
Oh my Lord. She's ahead of her time. People do now. I could blog it.
Menstrual fluxes of princesses and queens, so periods, their regularity, consistency, and quality were all the subject of widespread discussion. Marie Antoinette kept her mother in Vienna well informed of the details of her La Générale's appearance. So she kept her mother in detail of how her vagina looked, how things were looking down, because that's normal. Yes. 2 centuries earlier, Catherine de Medici likewise engaged a wide network of correspondence, including her male ambassadors, to document the menstrual cycle of her daughter, Elizabeth, consort to the Philip II of Spain. So they had a document, like what's going on with your period? How does your vagina look? How are things going on down there? But they had to be very open and document. And there is other things like that I've read where I think at the time of King Henry or before King Henry, they would escort them up to their chambers and then they would stand and watch as they inserted to have sex, because then it was consummated and they could literally see it. Oh, or maids would come and check sheets the next day and look for the blood from, especially if a queen was being given to her husband, to make sure that in fact she was a virgin and in fact that was consummated.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Could you imagine if for some reason you didn't have a hymen, because that does happen, without having sex? So, seminal statecraft. So semen, like what's going on, the sex lives of royal family formed a topic of discussion across Europe. After 7 years of marriage and no pregnancies, again, this is with Antoinette, a perplexed Joseph II, I'll only put it in here because it cracked me up, decided to have a chat with his brother-in-law, Louis, I don't know, while visiting in Versailles. The exasperated emperor then shared with his brother Leopold frank details about the sexual activities of a rather clueless couple. So he's upset they have not had any children. It has been 7 years. He has strong erections, he says. He puts in his member, stays there without stirring for 2 minutes, perhaps, and then withdraws without ejaculating, still with an erection, and wishes her good night.
Like how? Like how, though?
They had no clue that the sperm is what is creating this child.
But that aside, like I know that they were very much like just trying to get pregnant just to keep the throne going type situation. But trying to have a child aside, how do you just put it in?
Because it was a kingly duty. So I guarantee that he did not do that with his mistresses. So a king would have many mistresses, but the queen what it was to be an act of like to be in love with your queen or to want to do it with your queen was very few and far between. It was to be an act of becoming pregnant. So they didn't want to do anything that would take away from that. So like a lot of times they thought like passion would impede semen. Yeah, that passion, like being passionate or all that. They wanted to be very direct, very inserted. But he didn't understand that he needed to ejaculate, like, to get it done. So now a lot of people did understand that, but he didn't understand that he needed to ejaculate. So for 7 years, he was just inserting it, waiting 2 minutes and taking it out and saying good night. Poor lady.
I was gonna say, how
Yeah.
my God.
That's awful. So yeah, I just thought that was funny that 7 years. And also the fact that so often, which we're going to see in the story, women were blamed for not having sons.
Of course they were.
Yeah. So childbirth was yet another public spectacle of state. At the delivery of her first child in December 1778, Marie Antoinette shared her inner chambers, not only with her medical support and the king, but also the extended royal family, prince and princesses of the blood, and those who enjoyed particular honors at court. The queen's chambermaid, Madame de Campan, recalled in her memoirs how the stream of curious people who had rushed into the chamber was so numerous and tumultuous that it was feared that the queen would perish. Before they were forcibly ejected, 2 men even climbed up on the furniture for a better view of the royal vagina.
Royal vagina! Oh, that's what I'm calling it.
When another Dauphine, Catherine de Medici, so Dauphine is queen, that's what they would be, delivered her first child in 1544, the King Francois I not only wanted to know the exact time of day the boy was born, but demanded to see all that came out with the child, presumably the placenta or the umbilical cord. So here's the last thing I want to tell you, which is hilarious. Children's poo was always inspected. So the birth of Dauphin Louis Joseph in 1781 set a trend. So now they made a trend where they created a new shade of brown, caca Dauphine, color of the child's soiled nappies. So they created a new color, and people would wear it and also put it in their houses, called caca Dauphine. Why? And then intimate admissions have long been the stuff of gossip, fashion, and serious political debate. Turning in may only originally marginally improved your historical knowledge. But the fact that you are watching, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put that in there. So it was about the nappies. So here's my whole point in saying that. So whatever Anne's exposure, something she definitely knew was the art of seduction. And you're going to hear it when she goes on with her story.
Well, naturally, if she grew up in the French court, seeing people banging all over the place and nipples popping out.
But it's trying to say, historians try to argue and say, oh, but she was with Queen Claude. And my whole point to that is, but Queen Claude still had to be present in courts.
Right.
She did. Even if she went to go have birth every year, every single year, she would have to be present in court. So there's absolutely Anne. But also Anne's going to be exposed to, her mistress's fluxes, showing the period, reporting to the king, having people come in, and I guess seeing the birth of the baby, because for this to happen with Antoinette, that was in 1778. Queen Claude was in the 1500s. So it was, my assumption, way worse, because they are supposed to become more, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Civilized as time goes on. So, all right. So when the bilingual Frenchified Anne was 21 and returned to England, she was the court's darling. She was exotic. Her distinctive trademark hairstyle, tucked behind an elaborate hairband, mirrored that of Queen Claude. She danced better than the other ladies at the court. She had received an education fit for a princess, was at the center of the Renaissance France for 7 years, mixing with enlightened, forward-thinking men and women, and had rubbed shoulders with world-famous artists. No wonder Henry VIII was enthralled. Anne imported the latest French fashions into England and wore them. She also imported Marguerite's views on the new religion sweeping Europe, Protestantism, I can't say it. Marguerite was the petri dish and Anne the catalyst for the end of the Catholic England. When she returned to England, her wit and style were her greatest charm. She had a circle of admirers, became secretly engaged to Henry Percy, not Henry VIII. She was also entered to the service of Catherine of Aragon. So now she's a lady in waiting for Catherine of Aragon. But she soon caught the eye of Henry VIII. He ordered Percy from court and tried to make Anne his mistress. She refused. Her sister Mary then had been the king's mistress and gained little from it but scandal. So he wanted Anne. She said nope.
Yep.
And then he had Mary. And I'm going to talk about the life of Mary because it's actually kind of sad. But here's Anne. She's now positioned herself. She is in the Queen's court. Mm-hmm. So this is where they talk about, does Anne know what she's doing? So keep thinking about that as we go on. Or was she just a pawn in a deadly game? I don't know. There's a movie called The Other Boleyn Sister who really paints her as a pawn, right? But there's just so much debate. But one thing we do know is Anne is considered exotic. And here's why that is. I wanted to bring that up really fast. Anne has olive-colored skin. She's dark-haired, olive-colored skin, brown eyes. She has 6 fingers.
Oh.
On one hand. It is a proven thing that she has 6 fingers on one hand.
Wow.
Considered, and her eyes were slanted. So exotic because typically in England, you would call the English rose. They're very rosy, very white, very fair in their coloring, So again, what's so interesting to me is Catherine of Aragon was not that either.
Right.
So she would have been considered exotic as well because she was not like an English rose. Mm-hmm. Unlike Jane Seymour, who we're going to talk about next after I do Anne, who is a reason that, well, you guys will find out. So she was very English rose. So Anne is this exotic. They consider her beautiful. I think she's pretty.
Yeah.
She's like smart. She's educated. She is understanding the French arts. I mean, she's wearing the latest French fashion and they are way more forward than England. So French fashion first, then England follows. So she comes in just with this whole look about her.
Yeah.
But she refuses the king. So let's talk about the life of Mary. Because Mary becomes the king's mistress. Mary Boleyn was the eldest of 3 Boleyn children, likely born sometime between 1499 and 1508. She was raised at Hever Castle, the Boleyn family home in the Kent, and educated in both feminine subjects such as dancing, embroidery, and singing, and masculine subjects such as archery, falconry, and hunting. In the early 1500s, Mary traveled to France to be a lady in the Queen of France's court. Rumors followed her throughout her time in Paris that she was engaging in an affair with King Francis. So they thought she was having an affair with King Francis there. Some historians believe the rumors were exaggerated, but nonetheless, there is documentation that the king had a few pet names for Mary, including my English mare.
Oh. Okay.
Why? Would not be.
No.
Even if he was having sex with me, I feel like,
no, sir.
I'm not your mare.
Yeah.
My English mare.
Romantic.
In 1519, she was sent back to England, where she was appointed to the court of Catherine of Aragon, the queen consort. There she met her husband, William Carey, a wealthy member of the king's court. All members of the court were present at the couple's wedding, including the queen consort and, of course, her husband, King Henry VIII. But that never stops King Henry. King Henry VIII, notorious for his adultery and indiscretions, took interest in Mary immediately. Whether interested in the rumors of her previous royal fling or interested in herself, the king began courting her. Courting was very different with a mistress. So it was, hey, I want to take you as my mistress. You can only sleep with me. Does not mean I'm only going to sleep with you.
Yeah, of course.
No. So, where was it? The two were caught up in a very public affair. So Catherine was a good queen, as in the sense that she would turn herself. She would do the things that king would, and she would not. She would just turn her head and go on being queen. That was her goal.
Right.
Her goal was, I am queen.
Mm-hmm.
I am queen of this nation. I know what kings do. I'm just going to turn my head and I'm not going to, care
so
about
this
it.
really was just kind of like a job.
Yeah, it really was. Because
It's
they're
like, we're gonna run this country together. You're gonna provide me children so that we can keep the throne going. Essentially, is what it was.
it was not typically a great love story.
Yeah.
Typically, it wasn't. I think that the King Henry did have love for Catherine.
Yeah.
They were married for 23 years, but it's not a great love story. It's all arranged. It's all like, this is going to happen. And I do think Catherine was very beautiful. So when Henry was younger, I think he absolutely wanted to be married to her, you know? But as a king, like, every woman wants to be with the king. Every woman. They get women thrown at them.
That's great.
Like, because it also stations yourself in court. So like Mary, which you'll find out, if you have a husband, he's going to get stationed better at court if you're the mistress of the king.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it absolutely.
So if, let's say, when Catherine was married to him, Catherine could have, what do you call the man?
She
mistress?
cannot.
Oh.
No.
But
Because
Mary was
producing the.
She's Mary.
Yeah, because she's not producing a royal heir.
Okay. So if you're
Brilliant.
queen, you cannot.
Because it
But-
cannot be.
What was Mary's husband considered?
I think they tell it in here. He was just part of the court.
Okay.
So when she met him, but I do think
But it's okay
yeah.
for the women in that position.
because it's a bastard child, you know? So it's like his child, it won't care. In fact, honestly, what I read, if their son or daughter is royalty, like they were like, okay, I'm not even going to say anything. Like, I don't care if this, like, they'll take care of it like it's their own kid. They won't do anything.
Yeah.
So though it was never confirmed, some historians believe that at least one, if not both, of Mary Boleyn's children were fathered by Henry. Her firstborn was a son, a baby boy she named Henry. Though his last name was Carey after her husband. Had the king fathered the child, he would have been an heir, albeit an illegitimate one, to the throne, though the child, of course, never ascended because he never claimed that child. Mary's father and her husband, however, did ascend to power, likely as a result of the king's infatuation with Mary. William Carey began receiving grants and donations. Her father rose to the ranks at court, moving eventually to the Knight of the Garter and treasurer of the household. So he basically moved up in court with the king, became a treasurer. Carey began getting grants and donations from the king. The king basically said, yo, I like your wife. I have fun with her. I'm going to give you money because I'm going to keep sleeping with this lady.
Okay.
And that's how it goes. While Mary was pregnant and on the bed rest with her second child, the king became bored with her. Unable to continue their relationship while she was ill, he cast her aside. He began gaining interest in the other ladies of court and he got a chance with Anne and jumped at it. However, Anne learned from her sister's mistakes. The king himself fell in love with the young Anne or became obsessed with having her. In one of the king's letters, he wrote, if you give yourself up, heart, body, and soul to me, I will take you for my only mistress, rejecting from thought and affection all others save yourself, to serve only you. Boleyn replied with rejection, however, explaining that she aimed to be married and not to be a mistress. Your wife I cannot be, both in respect of my own unworthiness and also because you have a queen already. Your mistress I will not be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the question. Is she strategic?
Yes.
I feel like
Smart.
she is. I think
That's
she's smart.
She played the game right.
Because she knew that, I mean, here she was going to get married to Henry Percy. The king removed him, said, nope, Anne's mine. And she's like, no, I'm not yours.
Yeah.
Boleyn's response surprised Henry VIII, who is believed to have had several mistresses at that time. Reportedly entering into these all adulterous relationships because he badly wanted a son, and Catherine of Aragon had not borne a male, but Henry was desperate to have Boleyn, so he quickly configured a way to officially abandon his marriage with Catherine, which we learned in the last one. And this petition for annulment to the Pope, he cited an excerpt from the book of Leviticus stating that a man who takes his brother's wife shall remain childless, and claimed that he and Catherine, who was his brother's widow, would never have a son who survived infancy because their marriage was a condemnation in the eyes of God. So, as we know from Catherine's story, he goes at it and is like, I can't be married to this woman. I'm never going to have a decent child who's a son, even though I have a daughter, Mary, never gonna have a son because God hates this marriage, because I did a bad thing, because I think Catherine actually did sleep with my brother, even though the doctor said she didn't. And so I think that's why I'm cursed of not having a son. Following a 6-year debate during which Henry and Anne had courted discreetly, Anne discovered that she was pregnant in early 1533. Without the blessing of the Pope on January 25th, Henry and Anne quickly married in a secret ceremony led by Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, which is a Protestant. The following June, a lavish coronation ceremony was held in honor of the new queen. So we all know what happened, right? She said, get out, Catherine. They broke the church. I didn't put all that in there because we just covered that in Catherine. And if you didn't listen to Catherine of Aragon, I would definitely go back and listen, because I cover how he basically broke ties with the Church of the Catholic Church to make it Protestant. And he basically was like, I rule, because he wanted Anne. But I wanted to put in there that it took 6 years. 6 years of wanting her and going after her. Because tell me how many women would tell the king no.
Yeah.
Just saying. So the couple were convinced that their child would be a boy. But in September 1533, Anne's daughter Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth I, was born. So I wanted to put some snippets of Henry's letters, right? And then I'm going to read some of his letters straight out to you guys. Well, still snippets, but letter 1, when he writes of how he had been stricken with the dart of love. So these letters are in French and very hard to read, and they transcribed them. But I'm going to give you an idea of what each letter was about. Letter 3, which he sends with a buck kill. He basically told her, I killed a buck last night by my own hand, hoping that when you eat it, you may think of the hunter. Romantic. Letter 4, he says he sends his picture set in a bracelet. So he sends Anne a picture, and his picture in a bracelet so she may look at it.
That must be a very tiny picture.
Yeah. Letter 8, when he sends it, he's very worried because she got the sweating sickness, and she's super worried. He's super worried for her because that sweating sickness that we talked about, it took her out. Letter 15, which is just signed H, no other, A, B, seek R. Literally don't know what that is. I feel like it's code. Letter 15, this is hilarious. This is my favorite thing. Letter 15, which Henry writes, wishing myself, especially on evening, in my sweetheart's arms, whose pretty duckies I trust shortly to kiss. Duckies are boobies.
Oh, no. Not duckies.
Duckies. And then letter 17, which is finished with written with the hand, which fain would be yours, and so is the heart, RH. I don't know what R is. So here are some of the ones that he basically wrote that kind of is a fool. So, my mistress and friend, I and my heart put ourselves in your hands, begging you to have them suitors for your good favor, and your affection for them should not grow less through absence, for it would be a great pity to increase their sorrow, since absence does it sufficiently. And more than ever, I could have thought possible reminding us of a paint in astronomy, which is that the longer the days are, the farther off is the sun, and yet the more fierce. So it is with our love, for by absence we have parted, yet nevertheless it keeps its fervor, at least on my side. I hope on yours also, assuring that you on my side, that ennui of absence is already too much for me. And when I think of the increase of what I must needs suffer, it would be well nigh unbearable for me, were it not for the firm hope I have. And as I cannot be with you in person, I am sending you the nearest possible thing to that, namely my picture set in a bracelet with the whole device which you already know, wishing myself in their place. And then when it shall please you, this by the hand of your loyal servant and friend. Weirdly written because they talked weird. And it's also transcribing French and that. But basically I feel like in the first part, he was kind of like saying your suitors, but it was like him.
Right.
Like kind of code that. And then he was like, I wish I could be by your side, but I'm going to give you this bracelet because you're not letting me by your side. That's what he's saying. He's like, you're not letting me there. He also put himself H. Rex.
H. Rex?
Yeah, there's Rex now.
So is that what the R stands for?
I think so. Sometimes he goes RH. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Interesting.
So then the second one is no more to you at this present, mine own darling, for lack of time, but that I would you were in my arms, or I in yours, for I think it is long since I kissed you. Written under the killing of an heart, of the clocking minding with God's grace tomorrow my late time to kill another. By the hand of him which I trust shortly shall be yours, Henry R. Mine own sweetheart, these shall be to advertise you of the greatest loneliness that I find here since your departing. For I assure you, me thinketh time longer since your departing now lasts than I was wont to do a whole fortnight. I think your kindness and my fervence of love causeth it. For otherwise I would not have thought it possible that for so little a while it should have grieved me. But now that I am coming towards you, methinketh my pains been half released, wishing myself, especially in evening, in my sweetheart arms, whose pretty duckies I shall I trust shortly to kiss, written with the hand of him that was, is, and shall be yours by his will. HR. That was, is, and shall.
So dramatic.
I'm gonna kiss your duckies.
Oh, nothing would drive me up faster than that.
Can you, like, what was that? Like, I can't wait to kiss your duckies. And then putting that, hand of him that was, is, and shall be yours by his will. I'm gonna kiss your duckies. Anyways, I just wanted to put those in there so you could see his little, the man had obsession.
Yes, he did.
Obsession with her. So, what was Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn's marriage really like? Anne Boleyn wielded a great deal of influence over Henry VIII. Even before her marriage to Henry, as we all know, they went and completely dismantled the church. And basically had his ear, constantly in his ear. It was Anne who introduced Henry to the text obedience of a Christian man, which William Tyndale suggests that a king's authority takes precedence over the church. Interesting, Anne, that you would give him that book.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Or whatever writings it was. Henry would later go on to break away from Rome, as we all know, so she did that. It's also clear from the nature and number of Henry's letters during their courtship that he was deeply attracted to her. Historians note that although Henry famously disliked penning letters, over 2 years Henry wrote at least 17 letters to her. The girl knew what she was doing. It was written they had an intense sexual desire for each other. But things began to go downhill for the couple after Anne miscarried for the first time in August 1534. So she had Mary. Mm-hmm. No, sorry, Elizabeth, not Mary. Catherine, not Mary. She has Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. That's Elizabeth first, and that's going to be her only child. Mm-hmm. She's not going to produce any live births. So she's going to have miscarriages and deformed children that die, a lot of things like that. But Henry was under pressure to produce a male heir, and Anne would not conceive for a third time until the autumn of 1535. She had a second miscarriage sometime at the end of January, led Henry, always spiritually superstitious, to question whether he had made the right choice in marrying Anne. Henry and Anne's relationship, built on passion and expectations, seemed to have become more tempestuous, and Henry began to look outside his marriage for solutions. So Anne and Henry she was a passionate, everything I read said she was a passionate lady.
Yeah.
So she was not the queen that just turned her head.
Yes.
She was like, you're not having mistresses. You're with me. Like, you're not doing any of that. Like I think she very fiercely was, so here's where I go with this. I don't know if she loved him or if she was worried about him turning his eye.
Exactly. That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
She's trying to keep her place.
But they had a lot of passion. Everything I read said passion, passion, passion. And we all know what happens with that.
Yep.
Fizzles.
Oh, yeah.
Once you obtain it, because she just kept herself that new shiny thing.
I was just going to say, he's got that obsession with her. Mm-hmm. Second that he has it, he's going to be like, oh, this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
So I don't think necessarily when I read through this, I think you guys maybe will come to the conclusion. I don't think it was just that she didn't produce him a male heir. I think that was something that Henry could hold on to be done with things that he wanted to be done with, But I definitely think it was a catalyst, but I think he was like, I'm sorry.
You're not doing what I need you to do, so.
I don't have that feeling inside anymore.
Yep.
So Anne definitely had enemies. A promising new foreign alliance with the Holy Roman Empire floundered because the Emperor Charles III refused to ratify Henry's marriage to Anne. Hostile factions gathered in the wings, led by all those courtiers who lost their influence during the Boleyn change of regime, sorry. Anne also fell out with her ally, Thomas Cromwell. So she had a fallout with him, who had arranged for the proceeds from the sale of monastic property to end up in the royal Henry's coffers rather than be made available for charitable purposes, as Anne had hoped. So Anne actually wanted to be charitable. Thomas Cromwell said, no, I'm going to go ahead and take them. Okay. So in 1536, Cromwell made a decisive move against Anne. Accusation. So this Cromwell guy, everything I read about him is stay away, dude, because he's going to make what he needs to have happen. So he made a move against Anne. Accusations of adultery and even of plotting against the king's life were leveled against the king, her brother, and a small group of courtiers. So here's Anne's accused crimes. So now they're going at the queen. They're like, you have these crimes. You're going to stand trial for them. Adultery is the first one. The most well-known of Anne's crimes was her alleged adultery with several different men of the Tudor court. Mark Smeaton was a Swedish musician who was one of the accused. Arrested in April, he eventually confessed to having had carnal knowledge of the queen. It is believed that the confession was a result of torture or emotional pressure, but it carried the same weight nonetheless. His confession led to the further arrest of Sir Henry Norris, the king's own groom of the stool, whatever the hell that is, Sir Francis Weston, and Sir William Brereton. Maintaining their innocence throughout, all were found guilty at trial. One of the jury that presided over the case, you want to know who presided over this case in the jury? Thomas Boleyn, Anne's own father.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, Anne being the woman that she was, because I think Anne was she got a little power happy. So while being held in the Tower of London, the Queen had recounted conversations and flirtations with various members of the court that implicated herself and the men in something more sinister. In a playful conversation between herself and Norris, Anne had implied that were the king to die, Norris would be looking to step in his shoes as Anne's husband. Not realizing just how much danger she was in, she was unaware that all the conversations were being reported back to her husband. What was recounted as an innocent joke had just implicated Anne in a crime for more sinister than adultery. So she's up there thinking that she's untouchable.
Yep.
And she's making jokes with this guy Norris. Like, oh, haha, if the king were to die, you would be my husband.
Oh.
Yeah. So now here comes the other crimes. Conspiracy. Treason in the Tudor court was one of the most feared crimes. Having gained the throne during the War of the Roses, Henry's father won the throne of England in battle and not through succession. The years before his reign had been tumultuous, and Henry was very aware of the fact that the stronger claims to the throne could be out there. The fear of further war in the name of the throne meant that any criticism of the crown was met with swift justice. Treason was considered such a threat to the king that it was encompassed everything from plotting against the crown to simply mentioning the morality of the king or predicting his death. So you could literally just say, oh, I think, the king's going to die at 40. You're dead. That's treason.
Wow.
The revelations of Anne's conversations meant that Henry now had proof to charge her with conspiracy against the king. Had Henry had any hesitation before about whether to move to execute Anne was the right thing to do, now he had proof to show that he was being betrayed. So here's the other thing: witchcraft and incest.
Oh.
Though already armed with reason enough to execute his queen, the charges Anne faced continued to dishonor and discredit her further. It wasn't enough that she was to be executed. Her enemies at court wanted to ensure no legacy remained after her death. The rumor that Anne was a witch wasn't a new one, but her incarceration and impending trial fueled stories about her use of supernatural forces to secure her seat in the court. From having an extra finger to the rumored deformities of stillborn children, the court reveled in the stories of Anne's debauchery. And whilst her charges didn't include witchcraft, the long list of historic whisperings against the queen helped to pave the way to the final charge levied against Anne. Something so heinous that it would discredit her not only in the eyes of her husband, but in the eyes of God, an unforgivable sin. It was incest. The last of the men arrested and accused of having committed adultery with Anne was none other than George Boleyn, Anne's brother. Having been found guilty in trial, whose jury included his own father, again, George was executed for conspiracy against the king and for incest. There was no evidence to provide to suggest that Anne and George had maintained any kind of incestuous relationship other than the fact that they were spent considerable time together and were seen to be close. However, in finding his son guilty along with the others accused of adultery, Thomas Boleyn had sealed his daughter's fate. But what actually started these accusations? The accusations of infidelity against Anne first came to light in a quarrel between a pregnant lady of the Queen's privy chamber and her brother, who was privy counsel. In this argument, her brother accused his sister of being promiscuous, and she replies that her behavior is nothing compared to her mistress, the Queen, who has committed adultery with her own brother. The sister then goes to say that Smeaton and Norris have been seduced by Anne's caresses. Bernard identifies the pregnant lady in waiting as the Countess of Worcester, a woman who has often been talked of as providing evidence against Boleyn and who is identified in a 16th century letter as Anne's main accuser. Bernard concludes that the fact that Anne Boleyn's ladies in waitings knew of and spoke of their mistresses' affairs made her infidelities believable. But it's a little twist and turns. George's trial, though, I'm going to put this in here. George's trial is what sealed Anne's fate. So I'm going to talk about what George did, but I think George was like, fuck you. I know I'm going to die anyways. Yeah. So during the trial, George Boleyn was given a paper that he was ordered not to read out loud. But George Boleyn did read it out loud to humiliate Henry. On this paper, George was accused of laughing at the king's manhood, laughing at the king's poetry towards his sister, and laughing at his poor dressing style. The defiance from one of the accused, George Boleyn, sealed the deal for Anne. It was utterly humiliating. No king of England could not react to such defiance. Anne was doomed. Not saying that Henry, okay, so let me get to that in a second, cracked me up. Because I'm sorry, like anyone knows back then, they were doomed. Like once the king got it going in motion, this trial was just for all purposes of appearance. He already had her face. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think George, her brother, was like, okay, this is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And I don't know. No one knows if they were sleeping together. I mean, because in the movie, The Other Boleyn, they show it as in like Anne's asking her brother, please sleep with me because she needs to get pregnant with a boy. But whether that happened or not, and the brother doesn't. He's like, I can't do it. You know, he almost does. And he's like, I can't do it because it will keep their like seat in the court. Whether that even happened or any of that went on, like, I don't know, you know? Yeah. So it was interesting to say the least. Yeah. So George is like, this is not going to end for me. I'm going to die. So I'm taking King Henry out. I'm going to read this thing that they said I do not read. And it sealed the fate. Not saying that Henry did the right thing, as Anne had no chance to prove her innocence fairly, and he was himself for sure guilty of adultery by the end of his relationship with her, but he was not what he was portrayed to be. So when I say that, it's because she was supposed to be burned at the stake. He called in a very special executioner from France that does it with a sword instead of an axe to make her death swift. So the historians believe there is still some love behind, like he did care for her, but he knew she was going to have to die. And so he was like,
make it quick and painless.
Yeah. I don't think George hasn't got the same fate. But for her, it was like, you know, basically they think that it was like the last act of compassion for the woman he once loved. Like, I think Henry had a love addiction.
Oh, for sure.
So I still think that any woman that he had, like Catherine, I think he very much had a connection with her. And then, so any of these women, I think he very much had a connection with, but he was like a love addiction. You can tell because Anne kept that fire going for 6 years. Mm-hmm. You can't touch me. You know, we'll have a secret affair. It's naughty. kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not, we'll have a secret affair, but not like the first 6 years. Like, she just kept that. She knew what she was doing, but unfortunately her power just got to her head. So I wanted to read Anne's speech before she was going to have her head cut off. She got to have her last speech. And this is what she said. Good Christian people, I come hither to die, for according to law and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that whereof I am accused and condemned to die. But I pray God save the king and send long to reign over you, for a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. And to me was he ever a good and gentle sovereign Lord. And if any person will meddle of my cause, I will require them to judge the best. And thus I take my leave of the world and all of you, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me. O Lord, have mercy on me. To God I condemn my soul. And then she knelt down, saying, to Christ I condemn my soul. Jesu, receive my soul. She said this 3 times, till that of her head was stricken off with the sword.
Man.
And on the Dissension Day, the king wore white for mourning. White.
Oh, that's interesting.
But what did the king really want, you guys?
A new
king. Very good. The king wanted a son, correct?
Well, that's
And the king had a wandering eye. And there was a lovely lady named Jane Seymour who was pious. And she was in Anne Boleyn's Lady in Waiting. And King Henry saw Jane Seymour and he wanted her very badly. But she was pious and she would not have an affair with King Henry.
Oh, well, there we go.
Because she was good. And she was like, although there was accounts that maybe she was not so good and like to climb her way up their ladder. So King Henry betrothed Jane Seymour 24 hours after Anne's death and married her 2 weeks later.
Holy shit.
So was this a fair king who took kindness on Anne, or did he remove her out of his way because she could not produce an heir? So that's the question. Did he take kindness on her? Did he remove her out of the way? Was it for a woman? Was it for all the things? Did he let power get to his head? Who knows?
All the things.
Yeah, but I will say this. Anne Boleyn was a fiery woman who I think had the right kind of head on her shoulders, but then let it get away from her and thought she was untouchable. And one thing you have to learn when you talk about the king is you're never untouchable in the court. Yeah. So that leads into our next, when I do my next podcast, it will be on the lovely Jane Seymour, who, I've said this before, is said to be the only woman that King Henry actually loved. And not a great beauty.
Well, that kind of checks out. I feel like that's typically kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
That is pretty insane. What was that saying that you said about his wives? Like one died.
It's divorced, beheaded, died. Jane Seymour died. Divorced, beheaded, survived.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about this.
Oh, she's amazing.
Oh,
I'm so excited for her because Catherine Parr, her stories, it gives me goosebumps. Her story is amazing. So I'm so excited for her because I feel like she was dealt such a shit hand and she's an amazing person. Like she's one wife and then Anne of Cleves. I'm so excited for Anne of Cleves. She's the first.
I think he's had the same names.
I think it doesn't have the same names. The Anne of Cleves is their first recorded catfishing.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm so excited for her because she's so badass. She was like so badass. But Jane Seymour is, I guess you could say, a sad story, but a lot of people believe that she was the one that King Henry truly, truly loved. And a little snippet, he requested that he get buried by her when he died.
Oh. Wow.
So out of all his wives.
Interesting.
But with Anne, I don't know how to put it. Like, I think she just played the game.
I think
she got. And I think she was very intriguing. Like I said, she was feisty. She was passionate. I think that's the problem. They came together and it was like she was a passionate woman. She was not all pious and like, she was like out there French style. And then the king loved that. But then he was like, okay, I think you're too much.
But then he's over. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a terrible combination when someone's a love addict.
Yeah. Because then it was like she wasn't stopping herself. She was like, you're not going to have mistresses. I'm the only one you get. And then the king was like, yeah, that's
not going to work for me.
No. That's not how I do things. And so she was very like, they said a lot that I didn't put in there. Like they argued a ton. They were constantly fighting.
Yep.
Which meant probably a lot of passion.
I was gonna say, the more the fighting, the more the passion, the more the makeup.
Yep, exactly.
So that's a perfect storm.
Yeah. But that is Anne Boleyn, everybody. If I read anything that was off the mark, please forgive me. Again, I am not a historian. I just love history, and I've done a lot of reading on Anne Boleyn. And I'll send you a list of books that I liked from them. Watch the other Boleyn sister too. It's interesting. I don't think, of course, like all movies, it's definitely not historically factual, but I definitely think they put a lot of history in it. Another one I talked about was The Spanish Queen on Stars. That one's about Catherine of Aragon. That's really good. And there's one of Catherine de Medici that's really good. So Stars is like phenomenal with their history shows.
I feel like it's probably pretty hard to have like this history from this long ago accurate, just because there's really no.
When you see the accounts, it's just historian and fighting over what they think by reading these things happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't even say exactly when Anne Boleyn, Mary Boleyn were born.
Right.
They don't have an accurate an
accurate.
So it really is a lot of assumption that is done, like reading, obviously the letters he wrote, he was enthralled. 17 letters, and he didn't even like to pen a letter. He had other people pen them. So 17 letters he wrote himself. Tells you that's a lot of passion. And I can't wait to tell you guys about Jane Seymour, because I want to get your thoughts on what was it about her that made her, where historians actually come together and believe that she is the only woman Henry's ever loved.
Interesting. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be doing Daddy Mercury. So all about Mercury retrograde for the next.
So just came out of it.
Just came out on. We don't have another one until April. So yay. Good 4 months of productivity, hopefully.
Yes, I feel so productive.
Yes, me
like
too.
Obviously I came out of it, because I was like, when I told you that day, I was like, I'm in a good mood, but everything feels weird. So you're like,
yesterday, I was like, well, today's the first day out of retrograde, so your body is probably not used to no chaos.
So I was so excited. So we decided that when Mercury is not in retrograde, he's Father Mercury. When he is in retrograde, he's Daddy Mercury.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm excited.
Yes.
And then my next one will be Jane Seymour. Mine's going to continue on each wife until we're through his court.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do it on Henry if he deserves it. We'll find out.
We'll see. We might have had enough of him. Who knows?
We'll find out. We might gather enough through my stories of his wives to understand.
Like, he's an interesting man, so.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!